I just got done with workout 2 on the level 1 series, and believe it or not, it's a lot harder than what it looks. And I'm someone who would typically be considered to be in pretty good shape between train clients, skateboarding, being very active, and even level 1 stuff can be quite a bit of a challenge, especially if you're really trying to hit those mastery numbers. But after getting done with it, I wanted to make sure that I'm loose enough to go skate later, and wanted to run through a video real quick on trigger points. Trigger points are basically a general reference to an area that we would apply some like massage type pressure to get the muscle to release or relax, because a muscle can be really tight and wound up, what we call facilitated, which means short and tight. To make sure my hips are ready to go, make sure my calves are ready to go, I want to hit a couple spots. So what we use for tissue work for trigger points are lacrosse balls usually. You can use baseball, you can use like a softball. In fact, softballs are great for hitting some of the bigger areas, and I'll show you guys where, and I'll try to include little frame-in pictures for a lot of the areas that I'm going to hit today. So usually starting off with a single lacrosse ball, you can typically find them in most sporting good places, and I've gotten them at Dick's Sporting Goods, I've gotten them at Palladium Sports, I've gotten them at Big Fives. I don't know, wherever it is that you live, your sporting good place should have lacrosse balls. These are really good, the density is really good, they're a really good way of getting deep into some tissue that needs to be released and needs to be relaxed, so we have better joint and muscular function later on. Now, we don't want to necessarily really break up the tissue or get the tissue to relax too much before skating. So mobility drills and dynamic stretches are great for skating or before skating, but when we're recovering, when we're after a workout, after a bout with skating, stuff like that, the tight areas that can get wound up, this is the best time to actually hit it with a lacrosse ball or softball or whatever it is that we use. The first place we're going to hit is really kind of deep on the inner thigh. It would be, you know, if I was to reach underneath, it'd be almost like I'm pointing at my gooch. But really that deep inner hip flexor, called, you know, part of the complex, it's one of the adductor muscles. It can be really tender and really make it hard to open up. So if we go into like a lateral lunge or we're in this really wide position, if we're finding the hip wanting to bind up when we come off to this side, really that spot right down deep in there. And this isn't too uncommon for people to do a lot of street skating because you're always pushing. Unlike people that skate at the park more often, like myself. But we basically just try to find a chair or something hard to sit on, and you'll kind of sit on the corner or edge where we let the leg hang off, and then you'll just kind of stick it into that area that you'll find that can be tight. And in this one, all we do is we just put it on top of that tissue, we put that weight on the ball, and you'll feel wherever it's tender, wherever it's tight, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna suck. And so you're gonna want to put your weight down on it to the limit you can tolerate it, and you'll notice that after even 20, 30 seconds, it starts to dissipate and it starts to ease off. And this is trigger release. Like, same reason why you go to a massage therapist and get work done. You want to get the muscle tissue relaxed. Well, this way you don't have to spend the $60 an hour, but you'll stay on those positions until they release. And you may find one side has it, another side doesn't, so on. But make sure that you at least do it on both sides. The next one is in the calf. And so in the calf, mainly for skateboarding, we have this spot. I'm gonna try to flex my calf a little bit. So when I flex the calf, we're gonna find this spot up in the outside to be really tender, and then into the side here. So we have what's called the gastrocnemius, which is a calf muscle, and this is an area that could really typically benefit from some work. Being that this is going to be a little bit bigger area, oftentimes I will use the softball for it. Today I'm just going to use the lacrosse ball, but all I'll do is I'll put it on in that area. I'm just going to kind of move around a little bit, see if I can find that tender spot, and then once I'm on it, then I'm going to do a little bit of movement with the ankles, so I take the tissue through lengthening and shortening, and then if that helps, or if I can maybe find a more tender spot, I'll try to cross that leg over, put a little bit more weight on it. So then same thing, we kind of go in and lean it into the side, hit the side of the leg, Same thing, try to move that foot up and down, try to find those hot spots. Make sure you get both sides. I'm just gonna see if I have one. I'll do this one later so you guys don't have to sit here and watch me. But then we can get into the hamstrings a little bit and then the hips a little bit. So for the hamstrings, we have one called attack. We have one called attack and floss, which is basically I'm gonna go back to sitting on something. I'm gonna go ahead and start maybe in the middle of the hamstring, maybe a little bit more towards the outer thigh, and I'm gonna set the ball in there and then find any tender spots, put a little weight on it, and then I'm going to extend the knee and run it through. This is the flossing itself. We're gonna attack it in position, clamp it down, and then we're gonna floss it. So we're forcing that hamstring to lengthen and mobilize so it's not so tight and wound up. For skateboarding, we're gonna find that we're gonna be a little bit more tender along the outside of the hamstring rather than the inside, and that's okay, but make sure you try to clean up the entire thing. Next one is really critical. So we want to be able to take care of the hips, the glutes, the hip flexors, and when we get into the hip flexor complex, it's not just one muscle, it's actually a series of muscles, but they all kind of run along the same region, and so we can typically hit the majority of them by hitting some major areas. And so where your hip bone is, if I feel where my hip bone is, and then I can move down just a little bit below, and then I move about an inch to two out, I'll find this big lump of muscle, and it's just moving back and forth. And that's where I'm gonna go ahead and lay, kind of semi-belly down on and go into there. But from there, I'm still going to come across a little bit more. I'm gonna come up, and almost in that same line as the hip bone, I'm gonna maybe just a tad bit lower, I'm gonna clean up this outer hip area, and then into the middle of the glute or the side of the glute. And this area is really, really, really important because everything we're doing in our jumping, in our sliding of the foot, all of that action is being carried, or it should be carried if you have appropriate strength through that hip and that hip flexor complex, but it'll get used so much that it's something that'll get exhausted, it'll get worked up, it'll get tight, and then some might turn into some low back tightness. The TFL carries a lot of tension from the hip flexors to the glutes, and this is a big connector from the front of the hip to the back of the hip. And so this area can get really worked up, and when I pointed out the side of the hip, this is what I was talking about. And when we get into the side of the hip, we can do something called a contract relax. So when we're laying on that ball, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna squeeze my butt and I'm gonna relax it. And I'm gonna squeeze it again and I'm gonna relax it. And this actually can accelerate the release of the TFL, and we'll do the same thing when we get into using the glute. Just keep pumping out those contractions until you feel it release, and then move on. So I'm gonna actually use the softball when I get into my butt cheek here, and just same thing, I'm just kind of roll it on. I'll turn to the side here, roll it onto the hip, and try to find those tender spots, maybe even to where the side of the hip connects in to the glute. Same thing, contract, relax. You'll see my weight kind of come up, and finding all these little areas. And some of these areas might feel like they're kind of grindy. That's not necessarily uncommon, but it's not good. So work out those spots and positions as you go along, and you find by releasing the hip flexors, maybe the glute medius, you'll find a lot of relief in how well the hip feels. I almost forgot before we end this video, before I go into the outro of this video, is that there's one more really good spot to hit. Because after jumping, impacting, landing, taking drops, stuff like that, the feet can get pretty beat up. And so helping the feet recover can really make it easier for you to skate the next day. Maybe it won't feel so rough, be able to go right into another, at least harder session as you go along. But taking a lacrosse ball, pretty simply, we can take care of the feet. And so starting with the ball of the foot, just running left and right. If you have a golf ball, that'd be even better, because the golf ball's smaller, it'll get into the smaller area of the foot and help break up some of those adhesions that tissue that gets wound up. But pretty simple, just go left and right. If you find a spot that's a little bit tender, then you can kind of move the toes around and let it dig in. And then when we get into the arch of the foot, and I'll do it on this one so you guys can see, is that I'm gonna go up and down. I'm gonna go along that, what's called plantar fascia. And so some of you may have had plantar fasciitis issues with that. So this is a good way to get in and to release that plantar fascia spot right there. It's really tender. And so spending that time on it and getting that to release in the foot, help the feet feel a little bit fresher, help you recover a little bit quicker from that skate session that you may have just had. Remember, this stuff is all for after your sessions, not before. Only really big reason to use it before is if for some reason it's really causing a lot of discomfort. But that's why you should work on your mobility drills and your general strength work too, to help condition the joints and the tissues to be able to take up a lot of that work. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure that you click like, comment, subscribe. I'll keep the videos coming for ways to improve your general health, strength, mobility, and we're going to get into balance, proprioception, other components that would help every type of athlete, but really, like I said, this is more for the skaters out there like myself. So thank you guys very much, and I'm going to finish working this sucker out.